Good morning. Stand up. Stand up. Turn around. Shake your neighbor's hand. Shake hands. Come on, come on. You can do that. Sit down. Let me hear. How was your break? Pretty good break? Good. Okay. Thanks, Inbar and AgileSparks for inviting me here. I've been told I have to stay in this spot for a second until the photographer moves, so I have to make up something while I'm in this spot. I'm very happy to be here in Tel Aviv at Agile Israel. I don't get invited to a lot of Scrum gatherings yet. Okay, I've been invited to one or two, but they're typically not hanging out there. I'm talking about Agile at Scale. Title of the talk is Be Agile, Scale Up, Stay Lean, and Have More Fun, right, in that order. So we're going to talk about what it looks like to be agile, how we're going to scale up, how to stay lean and have more fun. And now we're talking about the Scaled Agile framework, so we're not talking about something that necessarily applies to everyone in this room. And I want to start out by appreciating the fact that the Scaled Agile framework is optimized for a thing. And what it's optimized for is steady, flow-based value delivery when a lot of software practitioners are required, right? So it's not optimized for a small project that could be well-defined and started finished. It's not optimized for initiatives that are relatively short-lived. It's not optimized for something a group of small teams can do. They don't need that. So when I look at this picture, I'm not sure exactly what the scale is, but this isn't, you don't need safe for this. It's overkill, right? Don't bother. It's got constructs and roles and things you don't need. About in here, it starts to be a little bit of interesting. You might think about the program level and think about some of the additional artifacts and roles. Over here, it gets kind of interesting and starts to really apply well. I ran into a company about 3 weeks ago that was building a banking application. They're attempting to deploy a single banking application across basically 50 countries. They have 2,500 people working on that single banking application. That's over here. I'm not even sure how to help them, okay? So somewhere in this range of 200, 300, 400, 1,000 practitioners working towards a common objective, that's what SAFE is designed for. Now, many of you, I know there are folks from Cisco and Intel, you have many, many more than that many practitioners. That's okay, they're not all working on the same thing. When you get to thousands and thousands and thousands of folks working at companies like Ericsson, that's when you're here. And that's when you need SAFE and more. So SAFE is optimized for this range. So if this is the range you're feeling and the pain you're feeling, you're probably in a pretty good place in this talk. I always have to have water when I speak. I have to have water all the time, but especially when I speak. So what do we got? We have a problem. I like to blame it on Gordon Moore. Where's the people from Intel? I know there are some here in the audience, Intel folks. Thanks a lot, folks. Gordon Moore says about 15, 18 years ago, he says every 18 months we're going to double the density of the microprocessors on that chip, on that memory chip or on that microprocessor chip. Sorry, double the number of transistors. And did they do it? Absolutely did it. Thanks a lot. So consequently, I met with a group the other day that's in the process of deploying all their development infrastructure, their CI environment, their automated test environment, using mostly open source, basically their IDs, et cetera, to the cloud. And they're hosting at Amazon Web Services. So we went through the financials of that. There are no financials of that. It's almost free. It's unbelievable from a standpoint of if you look at labor cost, or maybe marketing and sales costs or distribution costs associated with an application, and you compare that to the infrastructure cost has basically gone to about zero. Now, we didn't think 20 years or so ago, you can tell I've been at this a while, this is my 40-plus year in software development. I keep thinking some year I'm going to learn something new and get it right. But I've discovered that I'm basically on this incline of continuous deployment of larger and larger scale systems, getting a little bit smarter about how to build those systems, but the incline continues. So who knows At some point when I'm not talking anymore, I hope some of you will be on stage talking about better ways to build software. That's been my fascination throughout my career. So we do have some new tools. We have Agile, and I'd like to go down on the record right now. I'm like the biggest fan of Agile development you will ever find. My personal experience with Agile was a team from Rational Software that I had great respect for. We shut down Rational in Boulder in 2000, 2001, and this team, actually teams of teams, went to different locations, and they started struggling, with their basic rough practices, and they were iterating, right? 6-week construction iterations. But by then I had learned new things, and I'd been taught Agile and XP, and I went in and helped coach those teams, and it was such an amazing change that it was a sea change in my life. It's like, oh my God. I'm pretty proud of the RUP, frankly, but we never got results like this. So how many of you can remember being on maybe you are on one now, or you can remember being on an extremely high-performing team? Raise your hand if you can remember that time. Okay. Somebody up close, shout out what it was like to be on that team. What were some of the dynamics or characteristics? Pardon? It was good. What else? Fun. Did you work hard? Did you work as hard as you've ever worked? Were you accountable? And was it really fun? Did you get up and look forward to going to work every day? Absolutely. When we did the initial rollout at BMC Corporation, when we were trying to do Agile at scale for my very first time in 2006, I called Israel, got down there, and I said, I'm not sure if this is going to work because nobody's ever really done it. But I said, I've become so enamored by the capability and the empowerment and engagement of a high-performing team. I said, at BMC, if I come down there, is it possible, will it be okay to build really high-performing teams at the team level? And he said, you know, I'm going to have to check with HR. Okay. A bit of a joke, but kind of not a joke in a way, right? For those of you who are right now touching on HR and trying to understand that problem set. We didn't think it would be this way. I was involved in a set of initiatives back almost 20 years now, where we're trying to build basically provably executable requirements and provably executable state machines, and it can be done. There are places where, for examples, in telecom switching, they have tooling now, mostly stuff like built from companies like Telelogic in those generations, where you can model the inputs and the outputs of a state machine, and you can create software, and you can push a button and create the software and go. And we thought it would be like that, frankly. I didn't think I'd be here talking to people who are building really, really big systems. How many here are building really big systems? Hopefully some, or I'm really talking to the wrong crowd. Raise your hand high. I need to see them. I need some moral support here. Really big systems. Any one developer, tester even, can take that system down with a simple error. We didn't think that would be the case, right? We thought we'd be operating at an entirely different level of abstraction. Instead, we've grown and hired, and it seems to look a lot more like this. Right? Whacking away at our keyboards or our terminals. The first time I put this slide up in an audience like this, somebody yelled out from the crowd, they said, they have it lucky. I said, how comes that? At least they're co-located, right? They can actually get up and go talk to each other at a water cooler and figure out what this thing they're programming is supposed to be doing. We don't have that luck. We don't have that luxury. So guess what? Gordon Moore did his job. Have we done ours? Have we really scaled our practices to the point where we can keep up with the pace of that innovation? I think not. I also think it's okay because it makes a great career and it's kind of fun, right? It's pretty fun to deal with this. We don't even know what this stuff is anymore. Is software development scale, is it computer science? Yeah. Is it programming? Is it physics? Is it math? Is it social networking? Which of those is it? It's all of the above, right? Really an interesting way to spend your time, which is why I keep spending my time at it. Last summer or so, after a few more extra trips, I basically suffer from what's called as permanent jet lag, which means I never really know where I am. I sleep most any time. I can nap at any point. I could nap here in about 10 minutes and wake back up and go right on this conversation. I started reading Deming, and the trick with reading Deming is you don't want to do that when you're tired, because you read about 11 pages and then You nod right off, and then you wake back up and try to get reoriented. One of the most brilliant thinkers of our times, and Deming thought about, he thought about things from a broad perspective. He thought about management, he thought about workers, he thought about process, et cetera. And I read this quote, and this struck me. There's 3 or 4 in this presentation that struck me right in the gut, and it basically said, that's it. I was at a banking company, and I talked to this VP of business, the business PMO, right? So I think many of you here, when you hear the words, there's a vice president of the business PMO, you're already smelling trouble, right? Something's going to be wrong with this process. And he said he's a good, honest guy. And he said in his office, he said, Dean, I know what we're doing. I don't feel we're getting a really good ROI of our investment, and we're investing a lot, really, really a lot. And I don't feel the ROI is there, and I say, I agree with you. From what I've seen, you're not really getting a good ROI in that investment. And he said, people here think I'm defending the status quo, but I'm not. If there was a way to do software development a lot better, I'd do it, but I don't know what to do. Okay? And what I hear scares me. What I hear about Agile scares me. What I hear about these other methods scare me. What I hear about Kanban scares me. I don't know how to do those things. If somebody would take the time to teach me this new way of working, I'm all ears. That's from a VP of PMO. And basically it says this is what we have to stand up to now, right? We're going to talk a lot about leadership and about management, but guess what? How many of you here are managers? Raise your hand high. Did you abrogate all your responsibilities when the teams went to Agile? Don't you still have the responsibility to deliver value? To develop people, to deliver solutions? You're still part of the solution, right? And removing you from the solution is not a good plan. That doesn't scale. And that's one of the mistakes we made with kind of our down and dirty Agile. But we need to be Agile. How come? Well, you don't have to be. I struggled for a number of years to find a slide that was like the difference between Agile and Waterfall that made sense. And this is the best I've been able to come up with. And I stole this from my buddy Drew Gemolo. I couldn't think of this one. And when I talk to folks, maybe like that guy and that VP of PMO, I say, you know, you have a choice. This is the choice you've taken. You've said it's really important to know what you're going to get. So let's head down this path, and in a short period of time, we can deliver you documents and some unverified code, and eventually we'll give you a box of stuff. But I say, you don't have to do it that way. In that program, by the way, that same program, the same program that had 2,500 people, they didn't proceed with me down that path. That's probably just as well, because I'm not sure they had the kind of the political moxie to make the big change. But on that path, I could assure them and I could assure you that if the program decided to change their behavior such that every short period of time we're going to have a working increment of that monster system, they could have done it. It's a choice. We can do that now. We have the tools to do that. We can refactor as necessary. We've got test automation. We have 3 and 4 GLs. We have incredible working environments compared to what we used to have. So it's a conscious choice. Take your pick. Now, when I talk to people, they usually go, well, if I got a little box and it was any good, I'd probably prefer the box. Okay, well then, trust me for a while. Let's talk a little bit about how to get the box rather than the document. But you have a choice. Everybody has that choice. So we're here because we believe in Agile, for sure. But we want to make sure that everyone understands that every enterprise and every program has a choice which way you want it to go. I choose the box because the box delivers value. And the interesting thing about the way that box delivers value is it doesn't stop delivering value. I brought my iPad up here for my timer because I'm always amazed by these rooms that the lecture is supposed to stay on time. Where's the clock? Like, how do I know what time it is? So how many of you here have an iPad at home? Many. How many have an iPad without a camera? Raise your hands. How many of you have an iPad without a camera and an iPad with a camera? Raise your hands. Okay. Do you think that when the first iPad went out, Steve Jobs didn't know that he could put a camera on it? Or did he say, you know, I don't have to do that. The camera's not quite ready. The iPad's going to go. And it's going to deliver value. So I don't know where my iPad is without a camera. I think my wife has it right now, or maybe We use trickle-down economics, trickle-down tech economics in my family, which is I buy everything first. And then when the next one comes out, I trickle it down. And we're down all the way down to my grandkids. So my grandkids are getting my rundown iPads, but at least they're getting the technology. That value contributes and accumulates over all time. We're not doing Agile just because we like Agile. We do like Agile. We're doing Agile because it's about the economics, right? It's about the business value that we can achieve. So the argument for those working with your peers, or for some of you who are still on the fence, it's not about Scrum, XP, and Kanban. It's not even about empowering teams. That's a wonderful thing, and that's a means to an end. But in the enterprise, the means to an end is the reason to deliver value. And what's interesting about value, and I'll just kind of stick with this theme. So my iPhone is over there in my backpack. I bought one of the early iPhones. How many people bought an early iPhone? How much did you pay? Who paid a lot? Admit it. Who paid a lot? So I saw a guy raise his hand. How much did you pay? I paid $600 too. Pretty silly price now. I paid $600 for a device. I didn't work for them, by the way. I worked in the phone industry. I worked for another phone manufacturer, and I bought the iPhone. And I brought it in, and they were all mad at me, and then they wanted to tear it apart, and I wouldn't let them tear it apart. I paid $600 for that device. So my device, there was no GPS system at all. There was no compass. There was no app store. The camera was like one of those cameras you get your grandkids at Disneyland for underwater photography. You know, it's like, I'm pretty sure that's my wife in that photo, but you can't really tell. And in the in the US, I got my iPhone from AT&T. Did anybody hear about the AT&T stories? I couldn't even make a phone call, right? So with my big purchase, I couldn't make a phone call. Why did I pay so much? Because it was differentiated. It wasn't a phone. It was an office in a pocket. I want an office in a pocket, and I'll pay a lot for a not very good office in a pocket. So the money is good early. So think about these two together and think about economics. And I want you to think about economics because if you're selling or working in your environment to try to bring the benefits of Agile to the business and the practitioners, it's okay to focus on the economics. All right? Even nonprofits do better when their IT systems work better. So if you get the thing early, it delivers more value early. So it's where all the money is. It's kind of like Willie Sutton was asked, you know, why rob banks? That's where all the money is. Why do we go to Agile? We can make more money. How many of you here work for for-profit companies? Raise the hands high, a big crowd. Is it more fun when they're making money than when they're not? Duh, yeah. So it's okay. So it's okay to be a little crass and convert kind of the principles of these methods into economic terms that make sense. I know I do. I also served on, I have 2 lives. I serve on the boards of small companies, 6 down to 2 now, and I'm just clever enough to save their presentations, their board presentations from session to session. They never deliver what they say they're going to deliver. 2 of those companies are still alive. They never delivered what they said they were going to deliver. You know what they delivered? What their customers actually needed, right? So they're extremely successful because they didn't, can't really say this exactly in this, well, I guess I'm going to anyway. So they never believe their own bullshit, right? That's the plan, but we're going to go to where our customers want it to be, okay? So we're just going to follow the path to wherever that takes us. And not to mention, I saw an article the other day so in the US DOD now, they're waking up, right? The USD, can anybody guess what the United States Department of Defense spends on systems acquisition annually? It's a really big number. Take a wild guess. I won't make fun of you if you make a guess and it's wrong. $5 billion. $1 trillion a year. Is what they spend on system acquisition. And on small projects now, they've decided that you can use Agile development. But on the really, really big, risky projects, you can't. Explain that to me. Right? People sometimes ask me, are there programs that lend themselves well to waterfall? I said, yeah, there are for sure. If your company's addicted to not knowing what you're going to get, and they love the adrenaline rush that happens at the end of the project when everybody's scrambling and making excuses for what went wrong, you should go waterfall, right? So if that's the way you get your caffeine jolt every day, head down that path. Enough on that. Be agile. Let's talk about scaling up. A couple different ways to do it. You have another stark choice. You can figure it out for yourself. And by golly, you can. There's a company here, Spotify, that's going to talk tonight. They figured it out for themselves. Nothing wrong with figuring it out for yourself. If you have the time and the inclination, great. But you don't have to. And the reason you don't have to is we've spent almost a decade now working inside Agile shops and Agile enterprises and learning and understanding and recording what works well. Does anybody here want to know how to be a consultant? Does anybody here know one thing well? You do, okay. Here's how you be a consultant. You know one thing well. You find somebody who wants that one thing, and you go sell them that one thing, and they go, what's your name? Karen. Thanks, Karen, for that one thing. Karen's about ready to leave. Karen hangs around a second and says, well, hang on a second. What do you guys got that's really working well? Well, you know, we pioneered this thing the other day where we started using Kanban just for IT. We can't use it in development, but we've got a Kanban. Well, show me that thing. A Kanban board, okay? Show me that thing. You go over there, there's a Kanban board working on IT. Why does it work on IT? It's extremely transaction-based. They're not using class as a service yet. But as soon as they visualized work, right, they realized they had more work than they can possibly do. So the simple act of putting up a Kanban board really changed their behavior. Now Karen knows two things. So she goes to the next company and says, we got two things we can talk about. Well, if you keep going, you keep learning. And eventually, if you're like me and you write to think, I write because when I write and read my words back, if they don't make sense to me, I think I don't get it. So I'm like a unit test for my own writing. Right? Write the stuff and read it back and see how it works. So the Scaled Agile framework is here. And it's here for you, and it's public. It's freely revealed and publicly facing. It's clickable. If you want to know about something, click on it. And by the way, before you criticize a thing on the big picture, and that's fair, be sure and click on it and read what it says, okay? At least give me the credit to click and read it before you write your blog post about it, okay? At least see what it says, because somebody else is going to read it and they're going to go, that's pretty stupid because that's not what it says behind the picture, okay? 4 core values: program execution, alignment, code quality, and transparency, okay? We started with program execution because large software programs fail, and they struggle. How many people here are right now on a large program? Raise your hand high. I'm going to do a statistical experiment. Raise your hand high if you're on a large program. Okay. Leave your hand up if it's going very well. Okay? We struggle. It's hard. Where did you learn that? They didn't teach that in computer science. Computer science is way behind the times. I had a letter the other day from somebody, a professor, saying, hey, could we do some more exercises for your first book, Managing Software Requirements, because I want to teach it in my master's class in computer science. I said, please don't do that. Don't teach that book. That's the book that's picked for the curriculum, and I don't really have any choice. We didn't learn that in school. Had interesting blast the other day from somebody who said that program execution and alignment, those are not Agile core values, so I don't think the framework is very Agile. I don't know if they're Agile core values or not, but don't they seem like good things? Wouldn't it be cool if you could do that stuff? Before we talk about the framework in any more depth, I want to talk about the method wars a little bit and see if we can maybe put those in a little bit of perspective. I read Scrum. I had nothing to do with the invention of it. I was at Rational at the time. We were solving big problems in different ways with a RUP. And the Scrummers and the XPs were coming up our tailpipe, but they said silly things. Kent Beck goes on stage one time. He said how much architecture consideration would give to a large application before you started coding. And he said, 2 beers. Well, when it comes to designing big systems, I can probably drink a 6-pack, right, before I move forward with that. So it didn't really concern me much, but then I took Ken Schwaber's class, and I saw something that was really cool. And I saw something that the rep had really missed, and something I'd missed my entire career. The coolest thing about Scrum is we know what a team is. What's a team? 7 plus or minus 2, 2 key roles, devs and testers, and product owners and Scrum masters, and it works. Oh my goodness, I know what a team is now. Now, when I started to scale Scrum, I didn't like 7 plus or minus 2 because I was working in an organization that had 400 to 500 people. So when we divided by 8, we came up with too many teams. So we tried to double the teams and triple the teams, and it didn't work. It just didn't work. If you go to a daily stand-up and there's 7 of you there, you're almost a Scrum team. When you do your daily report, there's a high probability that person cares. If I combine these 2 teams into a Scrum teams, you do the stand-up and daily report, there's a low probability that anybody else cares. And now you're in a meeting that's boring, right? We're doing hair-on-fire development, and I'm standing in this meeting where I don't have any idea or any clue, and I could care less about what this person's talking about. That didn't scale. Extreme programming. There was a war at the time. I'm sorry to see that extreme programming didn't make the battle of the methods. These guys argued amongst each other too. Folks like Ron Jeffries started in Extreme and hated Scrum. Now he talks about Scrum a lot and wishes there were more extreme programming. How many of you have been to a Scrum class? Raise your hand. Lots. Did you see any code? No. How many have been to an XP training? Somebody, come on. Did I lose the whole audience or nobody's in? Has anybody ever heard of extreme programming? Raise your hand if you've heard of it. Raise your hand if you've been trained in it. Dang it, I hate that. I guarantee you, if you went to an XP class, you learned how to split stories. You learned about acceptance criteria. You learned about how to write the unit test. You learned about how the unit test is another set of eyes. So Scrum talks about the process, and XP talks about the code. Doesn't it make sense that couldn't you use these together? Is there some law of methodologists that say once you define one, even if there's corollary and complementary methods, you can't do it? It makes no sense to me. I love it all. I think it's really cool. I'd like my Scrum teams to create really great code. And I'd like my great coders to work in a simple process model where I know where the content authority is and I want to know what a definition of done is. So what's fundamentally different about that? Why would that be a debate? I don't get it. I don't see why that's a debate. It seems to me that should be a meeting of the mind. That should be an open space where everybody's going, oh my gosh, look at what we've learned. We know how to do this now. We know how to split stories. We know how to do velocity. We know how to have short planning sessions. We know how to essentially limit WIP. Let's talk about limiting WIP. Kanban's on stage. Kanban is the new arrival. Kanban is really pretty cool too, right? Kanban teaches you something that neither of those other things truly teach you: to visualize and understand work physics, to know how it is that work passes through your system, to see where the delays are, to see how the work in process stacks up, to understand your throughput, to increase predictability. Well, if I'm doing that, does that make those other 2 things not useful? Come on. This is not a zero-sum game. We've had some brilliant people invent some brilliant methods. You can use them all. There's no limit. All you have to do is avoid the methodology wars and you can put them together. But guess what? With few exceptions, none of these methods gave us a way to think about the problems at scale. None of them say, here's what happens when you have a PMO. Here's what you're going to do about the old waterfall software development lifecycle. Here's the role of a manager in this world. Hey, I'm building a big system. What does the architecture need to look like? How do I provide UX governance across 100 teams so that my user experience is the same? They're all quiet, right? Is that fair? Is that fair? And if it's the case that these are good, shouldn't we do something about it? And a lot of people don't work in small companies, small nifty companies. Some of them work in AT&T. I was at Infosys a month ago at one of their campuses. Anybody guess how many people worked on that one campus? 25,000 IT workers in one campus. And their world is basically a world of handed off specs and push down technology And if I'm a developer, I typically report for a lead developer who shows me how to cut my code. I have no clue where that code goes. I don't know what kind of problem it solves. I'm not a part of any team. I am a developer in a hierarchical system. It's not an empowering model. Do those folks in these big companies, the 8,000 developers at HSBC and the 15,000 at Lockheed Martin, is there some reason why they shouldn't be part of high-performing teams? Is there some reason that they can't have some of the same benefits that we have when we make Agile work? I think not. I think they're us. I think they're us that just happens to work at Lockheed Martin, not Spotify. I think they deserve the shot too. So for all of them, we've created the framework. So the framework is live. It's freely revealed and publicly facing. Every time we learn anything, we record it here. It is a work in process. It can't be done. Some say it's kind of complex. There's a lot of stuff on there. It is kind of complex. I'll make you a deal, though. If you folks start building much smaller systems, how many here is building really big systems? If you start building smaller systems, I'll make you a smaller framework, okay? But in the meantime, we have to have problems at enterprise scale where we're having 400, 800, 1,000, 5,000, 8,000 people working together. We need some answers for that. And I'll kind of go through it in a little bit of detail just to give you the rough idea. But when we went to put the framework together, and I remember one of my jobs was to tip a PMO. And there are 300 people in the PMO. This is a world-class device manufacturing company. They have a PMO of 300 people in it. And we were starting to do Agile at the team level, and they asked me, they said, hey, Dean, we'd like you to come over, spend some time, and we'd like you to tip the PMO to Agile thinking. My first thought was, why don't you tip them, and then I'll come for the second meeting, okay? That'd be a lot more fun. They said, no, we think this is your job. So I looked, and this is a number of years back, quite a few years back, 2008 or so. I looked through all my stuff. I looked through all my tools and toys and methods and practices, and I didn't have a story for those people. Do you think they care about Scrum? Not really. Do they write any code? No. They either believe that the teams are already empowered, and that would be good, or they can't do anything about it either anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So our XP and Scrum, and to a lesser extent Kanban stories, don't have any meaning up there. And I needed a set of thinking tools that could help them look at their software development lifecycle from a perspective that would show some of the ways it caused delays. And I had to turn to Lean, and I'm fortunate because I had some experiences with Lean. I actually acquired a manufacturing plant and went to Goldratt School. Anybody read The Goal? If you haven't read The Goal, it's a really short read. Read The Goal, okay, over the weekend. I mean, it's 150 pages, and you'll never think about work the same way again, right? The theory of constraints. So I pulled out my Lean tricks and found this incredibly deep set of things to talk about. One of which is, what are we trying to do? If I went through a slightly longer version of this class and said, what are we trying to do with Agile, we'd get lots of answers. Additional business agility, higher quality, more empowered, more engaged teams, all good things. But when I went to the PMO, I said, my job is this. I believe that our goal is a sustainably shortest lead time, with best quality and value to people in society. And that was what resonated with them. And they said, if you're here to talk about that, I'm ready to listen. Let's have a chat about that, because I agree that that's the important thing. And a few key hints on the right over here. I can't go too deep on any of these, though I'd love to. Taiichi Ohno basically says it's not a hard problem. Figure out when you got the order in your world, when you got the requirement that you were supposed to ship. Figure out when you shipped it, and then map the system and figure out when all the delays were. And what you'll discover is most of the time was in the delays. I'll talk a little bit about value stream analysis in my short breakout this afternoon. Mary Poppendieck said we need to figure out a way to deliver software so fast our customers don't have time to change their minds. I think that's a good plan too. Al Shalloway just mentioned at a conference in passing, he said, I'm virtually positive that whenever you have a software problem, it exhibits itself as a delay. So there's a secret, by the way, to sustainably shortest lead time, and it's not called coding faster. It's called reducing the delays in the system. And guess what? There's no vice president of delays. There's no PMO of delaydom, right? Fighting the issue there. Everybody wants to eliminate the delays. And when you lean out a manufacturing plant, right, you start by the question and say, who knows the most there is about manufacturing these fenders? And a traditional answer would be the manufacturing engineer for the fender plant. And in a lean sense, I would say, I want to ask that a question again. Who knows the most there is about building fenders of this type? And the managers would say, the people that build the fenders. Okay, so that's where intellectual property is. That's where the knowledge base is, with the people that build the fenders. And we need to work with them on a long term. And here's a few rules. Don't trouble your customer. Don't overload them. Don't make them wait, and more. And Kaizen, of course. And Kaizen, I use the word Kaizen. It literally means good change in Japanese, but it's more than that. Kaizen is good change with a kind of a kick in the butt, right? A good change with a sense of urgency. It's a healthy paranoia about the fact that how many of you here are in a competitive environment? Okay. There's a bunch of you here that compete with each other, right? So who's going to win? Whoever is the most willing to adopt and address change. And change is hard. So the winners won't come by just, adapting safe. The winners will come by being able to make change. In 2009, I think the most important book in product development came out that I've seen in my lifespan. It's Principles of Product Development Flow by Don Reinertsen. I can't spend any time on these. I will talk about them a little bit later today. This is the most critical thinking. Not since Deming have we had a way to think about product development in a way that gives us a systematic approach based upon lean economic principles. And you see them here. Many of these are already built into SAFe, and many of them are the rules that we use when we evolve SAFe over time. So now let's talk about the framework and scale it a little bit. The SAFe is not anti-Agile or orthogonal to Agile. SAFe is 100% exactly dependent on solid Agile teams. If your teams aren't Agile, your programs aren't Agile, the enterprise isn't going to be Agile. We start our SAFe training with team training, not with program and portfolio, which everybody wants to walk about, because Scrum XP is really hard. Building working software in a time box is extremely difficult. We align our teams, and we use their simple language, the team backlog, and we use user stories, because user stories is a really cool invention. I don't know if you know my background at all, but initially I wrote books about software requirements. I should have invented user stories. I think I was on vacation that week. It's a really neat invention. It's a great way to get people aligned to why I'm doing this thing. It's motivational. I'm doing this so the user can do it with that. They sprint or iterate. They run Scrum primarily, Scrum plus XP, or Kanban, or Scrumban, which is kind of the mix. Actually, the slide went by briefly here. Where's Inbar? A slide went by on the advanced Scrum thing, and that didn't show a Scrum task board. It showed a story Kanban board. So that advanced Scrum slide was reporting Kanban states, not Scrum task states. So all good stuff, lots of flexibility there, but boy, we need product owners, we need Scrum Masters, we need product owners in spades, because we need content authority. If you want the system to be decentralized for fast decision making, you have to know where the decisions are made, and you have to empower the people to do that. And that's the Scrum Master. And before you get anywhere else, you can't scale crappy code, right? All those little errors and omissions, those little misassumptions, the little C++ memory overflow here, the little buffer overflow there, the misassumption about that API, the misassumption about the interface, they all add up. And they don't add up in nice kind of anti-noise reduction ways. They add up and they build, and you get systems that behave really, really badly that are almost impossible to debug. Why are they so hard to debug? Because there's 10 contributions to a single anomalous systems behavior. So before you launch on your scaled agile path, before we launch SAFe, we double down And we double down we introduce all the areas. So when we roll out SAFe, we teach XP as part of it. But the ones we focus on are architecture, which certainly didn't come from XP, continuous integration, which was, well, it wasn't invented by XP, but it was certainly supported there, and what we call test-first development, which is a combination of unit testing, ATDD, and specification by example. Because if your code quality is good, you can go fast, and if it isn't, you're not going to go very fast at all. So if you want to build a really big, crappy system fast, keep your existing crappy coding practices in place, and you'll do that. So we got to double down. So we start with a team, and we double down with a team to put code quality in place. Had an interesting conversation about 40 minutes ago. Somebody who came up and said, what's the difference between a burn down and a burn up? None. I'm a manager. We've moved to Agile. My burn chart, but I can give everybody everybody's burn chart right now, okay? So this really is going to shortcut a lot of your manual work. Here's the vertical axis. Here's the target. Here's your actual. Free burn down chart, right? What's a burn down chart say? Worry more. I was worried before I saw the chart, okay? We have to have more than that. Right? We have to have key insights into what features are or aren't progressing according to time. And this quote from Deming hit me again. He said, you know, we have to take a systems view. It's about the team, and it's not about the team. We start with the team because they write all the code, but then we have to build the program. We have to build this next organization. And guess what? Systems get selfish. If I have 7 software developers and a Scrum Master over here, and I say, go build the very best component you can, you will, right? And if you want it to sort really fast, you'll pull all the data into memory to do the sort, because it'll sort really fast. And you'll harmonize, and you'll get better and better. And somebody will come along and say, I need help with something. And you say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. It's going to slow me down, right? Teams locally optimized. What choice do they have? They build systems that are locally optimized. So the components become selfish. So what is our responsibility as managers? There's a thing goes back 20 or 30 years, in the new product development game, which actually was the roots of Scrum. The word Scrum was first coined in a 1986 article called the New Product Development Game, and it called out the critical role of management who has what's called subtle control, okay? Not command and control, and not abrogation of responsibility, subtle control. And we need subtle control to manage that system. And there's 2 systems that work. There's the subject system we're working, and the enterprise itself. So we focus on the program level. And the reason is that a dozen really good Agile teams not agreeing on what they're building doesn't create a great output. And the physics vectors don't line up. They're really, really good, but they're going this way and they're going that way. I'd rather have, if I had to, B teams that were all lined up. I'll get better vector physics out of that. Can't I make my B teams A teams? Of course I can. So we align these teams towards a common mission. We do a few things. We use cadence and synchronization throughout. So these intervals here, these PSI or program increments, they're just meta sprints. They're big fat sprints. The teams still sprint normally, but we bring that stuff together. And we do a couple things like a system demo every 2 weeks. And this is really telling, because if you go into your organization right now, some of you have launched release trains, I know, because I've spoken to you. But I'll bet you can't do that system demo every 2 weeks. And until you can, you have false velocity. You think you're going fast, and you're definitely going, but you're not going that fast. And you need to address that. And because there's so dang many stories, has everybody here already seen enough user stories in their life? I mean, I remember at the phone company one time when we were trying to do this by the book, and we're approaching a planning boundary, and it says, okay, we've got about 5,000 stories in the backlog. So let's talk about story 3,211. You can't, right? User stories are wonderful. They are the long level of abstraction for the managers and the stakeholders that need to understand the process of the program. There's too many They're too small. They fit in stories. Sprints are too short to be dealt with at the enterprise level. Life can't move that fast at that level. How many of you experienced sprinting a program with maybe 8 or 10 teams, bringing the product manager in for the sprint demo for each of those 8 teams once or twice? Who's done that? And then how many times did they come back? Why? It's not their demo. It's not their interest. You're showing me stuff I don't care about. You're wasting my time. I'm not coming back. And boom, I've lost the connection to my customer. What if we created a system demo out of that whole stack? And it's 45 minutes every 2 weeks. And I saw one of those for a very agile company in their 6th year. And they did their system demo. Questions were asked and answered. 2 product managers presented, 1 product owner presented. There were 75 people in the room. Questions were asked and answered. The meeting was over in how many minutes? Who wants to guess? Guess. How many minutes for a good, solid sprint demo? If you don't guess, I'm going to stop right here. The whole thing's going to grind down. 10. 35 minutes. How could they communicate such good information in 35 minutes? It's only what's happened in the next 2 weeks, abstracted up to their level, to where it communicates. Face-to-face planning. So if you see 300 or 400 people in a room arguing about what they're building, that's probably a Scaled Agile framework implementation, right? And it will be one of the most empowering, most dramatic, funnest, and most challenging events you've ever been involved in your life. Because who's building this stuff? What does the manifesto say? Where do the requirements and designs come from? The teams. Well, if I have 100 people building, where do the requirements and designs come from? The teams. Who's going to agree on how they're going to build it? The teams. So we throw them all in a room about half this size, lubricate with Coke and sugar and that type of thing, facilitate a process to say, let's present the business vision, let's present the program vision, let's let the teams plan for the next increment, the next release or whatever. And when they make the plan, they believe in their plan because it's their plan, and they'll commit to that plan. And they'll be way more committed to that plan than any plan that I would have given them. So if you see, I guess maybe 10 years ago, you need to invest it in 3M to make money in Agile. Now you need to invest in small boutique hotels that have meeting rooms big enough for release planning, okay? Because that's where the revenue is going to go. But I do want to separate one thing, mostly because we just kind of blew it in terms of the way we described it in SAFe. Cadence and synchronization are our primary tools in managing the inherent variability of research and development. We're doing research and development. You're building big systems that you've never built before, right? You've never built that system before. Is that a pure applications development, just build the widget? Or is it a research project? Does it have a research element? Of course it does. Where's your research teams? They don't exist. We do research in situ in committed programs. Doesn't it sound a little dangerous? Doesn't it sound like something could maybe go wrong that I didn't anticipate? We have to plan for that. So we use cadence and synchronization to do that, but we ship whenever you want to ship. So if your business is slow right now and getting out a release every 10 weeks is great, that's super. If you're already shipping, maybe 5 or 7 releases in a 10-week period, that's also super, but you still need to plan for what those releases are and get together. So our mantra there is develop on cadence and deliver on demand. And as I mentioned, SAFe is a work in process. SAFe is definitely moving. So if you look on SAFe 2.5 right now and click on develop on cadence, deliver on demand, we'll tell you the story from a lean perspective as to why that works. There's a story behind every artifact. You have to stay lean. Pretty lean so far. Inbar Oren did a 7-minute video on SAFe where he basically described the fact that the program is no different than a team. It's just more teams working together. So it's a fractal. He didn't use that word. But a program in SAFe is a group of teams that plan together, commit together, execute together, demo their wares together, and inspect and adapt together. Does that sound familiar? That's what a Scrum team does. We just do that for all the teams in the program. So we know that's quintessentially lean or quintessentially scrummy because it follows the same pattern. As long as you're inspecting, adapting, and committing together, you're pretty good. But we need to have an aim for that system, and that's the portfolio level in SAFE. And the portfolio level in SAFE has been the slowest to be elaborated and the slowest to come. How come? Why is it still under development? I'm going to give you a preview of 3.0 here in a little bit. It's going to look way different. How come the portfolio is the slowest to develop? I hadn't found enough of you people that had solved the problem yet to write it down, right? I've had enterprises come to me and say, we would like to do agile portfolio management. And our teams are waterfall. And our programs are waterfall. Well, how are you going to do that? The portfolio has to come last. What's the goal of the portfolio? To be able to steer this giant merchant ship pretty tightly. Well, how can I do that if every program is mired in a waterfall model with a bunch of technical debt? And if they're not lined up in a way that I can make a change. I've got 6 big programs. They're all waterfalling. They're all in different cycles. I need to implement single sign-on across all 6. How do I do that? You can't even reason about that. It's like, well, we'd wait for the next requirement specification for this program, but they've just started, and we missed that one, so we'll go back. There's no way to do that. Synchronization is our trick. Synchronizing the backlogs is the way to scale vertically. And budgeting needs to be different. Lean and agile budgeting. You saw no budgeting up here this morning when that slide went by. It's okay, here, a secret. It's actually not no budgeting. It's a lighter weight approach to providing budget boundaries and to avoiding the nasty problem of project-based funding. Project-based funding is basically death to agile. It's death to productivity. So that article on SAFE is called Lean and Agile Budgeting Beyond Project Funding. Turns out we don't need projects. The word project doesn't actually appear in SAFE. Don't need them. Teams and programs are fed content. Content initiatives are prioritized by the people that have the content authority, et cetera. Enterprise architecture matters if you're building big systems. We just went through a major transformation in one of our companies with $250 million a year company, and we switched all their app servers, migrated all their app servers to JBoss. It was a really big deal. That required a lot of work. From an agile perspective, what customer advantage was there that my app server that I never see to begin with is JBoss? And the answer is none. From a business perspective, what's the advantage of getting off our SLA for our old thing and increasing the performance and consistency and maintainability of our solution by a factor of 3 to 5? Is there business value in that? So don't tell me there's no value there. I guarantee you there's no value there. But that value can't come back all the way to the user. That happens a lot in really, really large systems. Lots of times I'm working on non-functional requirements and other things. So when you talk about architecture as a first-class citizen, it means it's because it delivers first-class value to the business enterprise. PPM, Program Portfolio Management. So okay, for starters, there is no PPM. There are people in your enterprise that are involved in strategy and the investment funding. And oftentimes strategy comes from one place and gets handed off to investment funding for another. There are people involved in your enterprise that provide assistance in program management, and there are people that are involved in our least favorite word, governance. Those people have been taught the waterfall method of software development. Who taught them? Who here has been at this for at least 30 years? Raise your hand. Nobody will raise their hand now. You're all like 21 now. Come on. 30 years in software development. Raise your hand. It's a really shy audience. It's like I'm in Finland again or something. I thought I was in Israel. Raise your hand if you've been in software development for 30 years. Going to be some hands out there. Okay, a few hands. Who taught them the PMO waterfall development was the best way to regulate software development? We did, because that's the way we did it. So what? They need to be retaught, right? New lessons need to be had that way. And lastly, but definitely not least, how are we going to do this? Anybody remember the slide I had about 40 minutes ago? I had a foundation I didn't talk about, the House of Lean. Anybody remember what the foundation was? The bottom layer? Leadership. Leadership. So if you're going to lean out of manufacturing, let's say you're Nokia and you're going to a supplier and you want to lean them out. Now, why would Nokia invest their time and money in making a supplier more lean? Why would they do that? Why do they care? Why? If the supplier is more lean, what happens to Nokia? Their costs go down. Okay? So when they go to do that, they don't go out onto the floor and start tinkering with work cells and manufacturing instructions and say, build it this way. They take managers aside for boot camp, lean boot camp, and they teach them to think lean. Does anybody have an idea how long that boot camp typically takes? 2 weeks. Okay? So if I'm a lean manager, let's say I'm an inventory manager, and I go to that boot camp, I walk in, I get ready, I walk past my finished goods with a source of pride. And I go away and I get trained for 2 weeks. And I come back and now when I look at my finished goods, what am I thinking? Oh my God. Nobody's bought any of that? Oh my God, what have I been thinking? That's an epiphany, but it takes time. For your key stakeholders, maybe for you and for your key stakeholders, how much training and education have they had in lean and agile development? 2 weeks? A day, an hour, a book? Who's going to teach them? It's not me. You're going to have to do it. My next talk, I'm going to talk about these 4 key principles. Take a systems view. I'll describe what we mean by that. Embrace the Agile Manifesto. If your organization can't read the manifesto and not quake in its boots or break out in a cold sweat, if they can't look at that and say, no, we do hire motivated individuals and we trust them, and no, we are going to allow design to emerge and we're going to have them participate. If you can't stomach that, don't head down this path. It's not optional, right? And others as well. Product development flow and unlocked intrinsic motivation of knowledge workers. I promised have a little bit of fun, and the reason I can have a little bit of fun is our teams are having a little bit of fun. So when you go to say, if you look at the case studies, and that's frankly, I'm just an old-fashioned person. I focus on the results, and I think it's more fun to be part of a winning program than not. Greatest thing Mitchell has done in my 14 years here. Telstra, Australia, happy project sponsors, happy teams. I don't even believe 100% projects delivered on time and budget, but fantastic. I can understand 50% cost to deliver and 6 times increase in delivery frequency. Do you think they're having more fun at Telstra now? You bet they are. They've got their mojo back. It's a data warehouse team. It's a back office team. Nothing ever came out of it, right? I sit on board meetings on occasion where developers, where board members are talking about software development and they're going, on this new initiative, is there any way we can do this without involving IT, right? What can I possibly do to avoid bringing this to IT? That's not the case there. It's not the case here. Employee engagement at John Deere ISG up 9.8%. Some critic wrote on the blog and said, well, wouldn't it have been cool if you had a method that was truly agile that allowed employment engagement to go up like 50%? I'd say that would have been really cool because they were at 86% before we did it. That would have been some really interesting math, right? Kind of hard to accomplish. It's more fun. It's more empowering. It's more personally engaging. It's more personally rewarding. What does a developer want to do when you get in their head? And you ask them, why do you do this? What motivates you? Well, it's a puzzle. Yeah, so what? What about solving the puzzle? Well, I like solving the puzzle. And then what? What really motivates you? Dean, I really like it when people use my code. Okay? That's what I'm here for. I like it when people use my stuff. So let's use their stuff. Outsourcing. Big takeaway. Teams understand why they're doing that important work. I'm done. I thought I'd have a couple minutes for questions, but I don't. I will tell you this. In June 28th of this year will be version 3.0 of SAFE. It's pretty materially different. The place that we work on the hardest to try to expand it is at the portfolio level. There you start to see value streams as explicit constructs. So when you think about time to market, you can think about start to finish. You can start to see the way lean agile budgets go to value streams as opposed to directly to individual initiatives. You can see a lot of other cool stuff as well, but you won't be able to see it until approximately July 28th of this year. So I tell you what, my time is up. I will take one question, and then I'll get my rear end off this stage. Is there one question out there? Can I take one, Inbar? Inbar says it's good. I did manage my time box. Question? You got to ask one question. It's going to be really embarrassing. Ask one like, what time's the break? Any question? Okay, no questions. We're done. Fair enough. Thanks.